because we really don't know what we want, right? And knowing what we don't want is just as important because it helps us narrow down what we do want. We have so much choice now, so much choice in the things that we read and where we work, the type of work that we do. We don't have time to do everything, right? And our most precious resource is time.
Hey nerds, Monica here. Welcome to the Data Podcast for Nerds, where we get to talk to awesome data professionals and ask them all about how they use data to solve the world's problems. And we always include fun bits because we're all nerds here and we really love to have fun. So today with us, we have Dan Everett. How are you doing, Dan?
I'm doing great, Monica. Thanks for having me on the show. Looking forward
Absolutely. Thank you so much for coming. So we typically start off all of our episodes by understanding people's origin stories. So if you could please let us know about your background and how you got to where you are today in your career.
Ooh, that's a long story. I'll try and keep it short. So back before the internet,
Love it.
when we had modems, and so I was looking at jobs in the newspaper because that's what we still did, and all the jobs were around Oracle database management at the time. This was the late 90s, and so I downloaded Oracle with a modem in like 25 parts, put it together on my computer, and taught myself SQL. So that was the beginning of my journey in data. From there, I went into tech support, and then pre-sales, and then product marketing. And now I don't have to actually make the stuff work. I just have to make it sound good.
There you go. So when you taught yourself SQL, can you go into specifics there in how you did that?
So this was the days before internet. So
yeah,
I went to a bookstore.
Okay.
I bought a book on SQL, and then I went through the book. I learned enough to fake it into a job doing tech support for a company where they were doing data migration software. So they were moving from an image database on an HP 3000 to an Oracle database on an HP 9000. So there's probably some people are like, what are those systems? But yeah.
That's so interesting because now with the internet, of course, there's all of these like online courses that you can take, and they have sandbox environments where you can get in and play with the code, see how it works and all of that. So in your experience, was it really just when you got that tech support job, that's when you started using SQL?
Well, I had to learn enough on my own with the book, and having downloaded Oracle onto my computer, right, and then doing things with it. So I had to create my own sandbox.
Okay.
And get my own learning program and then do it. But yes, a lot of it was, what I learned, was through trial and error as part of being tech support.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's really interesting about the building your own sandbox. So like what data sets or data were you working with and putting into that sandbox?
It was just the default data that Oracle loaded when you downloaded Oracle.
Okay.
So they had some default data sets, and like the default Scott Tiger was the default username and password, and then when I got into pre-sales, I would go around and I would get on people's systems and go Scott/Tiger. Oh, look at that, I'm in.
Oh, wow.
It was really, cybersecurity was not anything like it is today.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, because we just had National Cybersecurity Month, and I was talking about best practices and whatnot, and so this Scott password is like the old school password 123, essentially.
Yeah, basically, yeah.
Oh,
It was the default password for when you installed Oracle. And yeah, there were people that they never got rid of it. They didn't delete that account. It was just sitting there. They probably didn't use it, but it was sitting there. So, and it was an admin account.
Now that makes me curious to know how many systems out there still have that default password. Do you think?
Oh,
right? Oh, good.
I'm sure there's some nerd out there that can tell us.
Yes. So what do you do today? What is your title and main responsibilities?
So I'm semi-retired. So I have my own business. I call it Insightful Research. And mostly what I do is write on data and analytics topics that interest me. I guess being a single person business, my title is owner / janitor / IT support / name your role. But one of my favorite things to do, is like when you go online and you download something and they ask for your title. So I always put in Master of the Data Universe. So my title is Master of the Data Universe somewhere in somebody's database. So probably a few of them. So
I absolutely love that. The best thing about owning your own company
right.
is you can make up those. So
Right.
at Nerd Nourishment, I am Chief Data Enthusiast.
Cool. So I've been thinking about doing this little cartoon. So there's really old cartoon called He-Man and the Masters of the Universe. So I would be He-Dan and the Masters of the Data Universe.
Oh my gosh, I love that.
I'm a little bit quirky if you haven't figured that out.
The best way to be. Let us talk and explore more about that quirkiness. I would like to get into the fun bits, if that's okay.
Okay. Yeah.
So we talked a little bit prior about your quirkiness, and you create data parody songs.
I do.
Okay. Can you tell us what songs you have and how that came about?
Oh gosh. Okay. I'll start with the easy part. How that came about. So as part of the what was it? MDM marathon thing that they do in EMEA. So a bunch of people like Scott Taylor and Tianka Fang and some other people, they did a data parody song to one of the Queen's songs. I forget which one. And I thought, oh, that is so cool. And I've always created parody lines for songs in my head. It's just the way my brain works. And so I thought, well, I can do that. And then I had so much fun that I just started doing them. And I don't know, I think I have 20 now. I could do a couple albums, I guess. The Pain of Silos to Simon and Garfunkel's The Sound of Silence was probably one of the most popular ones.
Mm-hmm.
I did one to Britney Spears. Oops, I Did It Again. Left My Instance Running.
Oh my gosh.
AC/DC, Highway to Hell. So AI is Swell. That was a really fun one. So that's about generative AI. So yes, I have quite a few.
I love that. Are they posted anywhere, like on a YouTube or anything like that?
So they're on LinkedIn. So I was trying to post them on YouTube, but some of the songs, I have clips from stuff that is, technically copyrighted, right? So they wouldn't allow me to post it on YouTube. But if you go to my LinkedIn profile and you look in the featured section, there's a post there. I think you have to scroll over one, and then it'll send you to the article that's got my list of all the data parody songs.
Oh, perfect. Okay, so it's in an article where we can see all of. Okay, perfect. Yeah. And I'll put a link in the show notes too, so everyone has access.
Okay.
I love that so much.
Thanks. Yeah, it's a lot of fun. So
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah. Another thing that I wanted to talk a bit more about was kind of the journey through being a data professional. More specifically, like when you are moving from being an individual contributor to management. This isn't really taught much anywhere, and some organizations don't really prep you in this case.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I just wanted to pick your brain about like any advice that you have for people that are moving in this direction.
Yeah, I think that it's a wonderful topic to talk about because I don't think we talk about it enough, right? And I'll speak from my own experience, right? As an individual contributor, I got to a point where I felt very comfortable, right? Like, okay, I know what I'm doing and I'm in control of what I do. And like, okay, I can do my timelines and then you become a manager and all of that, it changes, right? So your success is now dependent upon other people doing their jobs in a timely fashion. Now it's about communication, not just with your direct team, the people that you're managing, but also, people above you that you're having to report to, right? So, you get pulled in multiple directions. You have, your direct boss that you report into, but then you typically have other stakeholders that you're accountable to. So it's a very different type of work, and it can be rewarding in its own right. But I think that you're right. I think there was some stat that I read in a Forbes article that said 60% of new managers fail in the first 24 months or something like that. I think part of it is just that shift of what it is that you're responsible for. And it's always somebody comes to you and says, "Hey, you've done a great job, and we want to, make you manager now." And of course, that feels good, right? That my ego, yeah, okay, and you want to say yes, yeah, right, but you have no idea what you're getting into. And I think that I think what would have been helpful for me would have been if I would have said, "Well, let me take a step back here for a minute, and then find somebody that I respect as a manager," right? Maybe it wasn't my direct manager, but then go and have a conversation with them about like, "Hey, I've been asked to do this. What am I getting myself into?" Right? So the first part of anything is really like an assessment, like, what am I getting myself into, right? You know, how do things change? And being really honest with yourself about, is that something that I want to do, right? I mean, there's the whole prestige, and typically management makes more money, right? And all those things are a big draw. But at the end of the day, if you don't like what you do, they become long days. So
Absolutely.
I don't know, if you've had similar experiences and what those have been like for you.
Yeah. Yeah. I think my biggest shock was when I transitioned into management, not being able to get into the weeds anymore, right? Because I wasn't actually sitting there coding or doing anything of that sort anymore. I was, going to a lot more meetings than I
Right.
was, originally doing. And I didn't anticipate that at all. And I would help my team members with, maybe a little bit too much.
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh, give me some, I can review the work and make sure that you're doing well, or make sure that, if you're stuck somewhere, I can help out. And then I would like try to get into the weeds again.
Right. Right. Well, I mean, we naturally default to, what we know, right? And that's what you were doing. We've been doing, right? I've been down in the weeds doing this thing. Um, and then I mean, sometimes what's really hard is if if you're managing people that you were peers with before.
Yeah, that's a good point. So, someone that you were just the same level with for maybe even years.
Right.
Now you're on a different level and it's like that vibe just changes.
Right. I mean, you think, oh, we're still going to be friends and you're still friends, but it's a different relationship now, right? You have to hold them accountable for stuff, right? And they have to see that you're not going to let your relationship with them get in the way of getting work done.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's a hard one. I think it would be really good if I don't know the stats. I think I saw somewhere like 80 or 85% of companies don't actually provide training for new managers, which if that stat is true is just atrocious.
It's very high.
It would be really helpful if companies had a formal new manager training program, right? And even one of the things that I've done in the past is to go and seek a mentor. And mentors really probably shouldn't be your direct boss because then it gets kind of fuzzy in what the relationship is. But again, finding somebody that's more senior in being a leader, and seeing if they will, be a mentor for you, where you can just go, and say like, I'm having these sorts of troubles and I really don't understand why, and they can give you some perspective and in a safe environment, right? Because with your boss, like, what do you mean you don't know what you're doing? Never want to say that to your boss.
Yeah. But it is good to be somewhat transparent and say, ask lots of questions. Not just completely say, I have no idea what I'm doing, but specifically like hone into something like, I don't know XYZ, can you guide me in that situation?
Absolutely. I think I was being a little off the cuff there, but I mean, we have to, we don't know everything, right? And we have to ask for help, right? And I think that's the other thing when we're looking to make a move from an individual contributor to a manager is asking yourself, at least from what you can see, what's the culture like, right? From a leadership perspective. Because those things do change, right? Even the culture changes in the terms of the people you're interacting with, right? And how you interact with them when you go from being a manager from an individual contributor to a manager. So
going back to the onboarding thing, I've seen this as a trend at different companies at all kinds of different levels too, right? Like when you get a new job, I don't know about you, but every time all of the onboarding procedures are kind of all over the place. And I've only had like a couple companies that like had it on lock, but for the most part, it's been kind of rocky.
yeah, I was having a conversation on LinkedIn with somebody, Mark Staus. I don't know if you know Mark, but we were having a conversation about upskilling people, right? And his perspective is that most companies nowadays sort of leave it up to the individual to figure out how to upskill themselves, right? They aren't proactively providing training in those sorts of things, right? So it's like, hey, we've got access to LinkedIn Learning or some other learning platform, and hey, knock yourself out, right? Oh, but still get your 80 hours of work done.
Yes.
Because it's not 40. Well, I don't know anybody where it's 40 anymore. But they've really shifted the responsibility of training onto the individual, and I don't think it's working well for companies or the individuals. But I'm not an HR expert, so
Yeah, I can see it being good, have its pros and cons, right? Because it's like they try to have you upskill in the way that you want to, but then it's like, well, where do I go if I don't know where I need to upskill? Do you have any advice there on where to even start?
Well, I think what happens a lot of times is it just ends up being a lot of trial and error. So, you take on a manager role, and all of a sudden, I've never had to do performance reviews for somebody before, right? And so now I need to go figure out that system, right? And then you have to take all the initiative to go like, where's the training for this? And I take the training and I don't understand something, and then I got to go figure out who I talk to actually figure out how this works. That's where the sort of some of the mentoring pieces, right? Hey, you've been using the system for 12 years now. show me how this works, because I have no clue.
Yeah, exactly. Whenever I start a new position or a new role, I always put together a list of resources on like websites to go to, people to talk to. Right. And then so the people that you talk to also know different websites and systems to use as well. So I think putting together something like that has been helpful, at least in my case.
Keep a running list of I've always done it in a spreadsheet, but like you said, the people to talk to, like, oh, this person knows about this, this person knows about that.
Yep.
You find them out, oh, new entry today.
Yes, exactly.
Dear spreadsheet, today I have a new entry. I learned about doing performance review.
I never thought about it like that, using a spreadsheet. Yeah, using a spreadsheet as a diary. Yes. That's hilarious.
or maybe it's OneNote, or whatever you use.
Yep, absolutely. So now that we have, tons and tons of resources available to us, what are your go-to resources when you're learning something new? Is it still books?
Well, it's a mix of written content. So, I mean, books fall into that category, but now, with, Google, right? Like you go search and you can find blogs and white papers and, stuff on whatever you want to know. And then, YouTube, if it's, I'm a do-it-yourself person. I like to fix things or break things and then fix them, as my wife says. So then there's YouTube, right, where you can actually see, like, oh, how do I take the sink apart?
Yes.
Yeah. So those are, that's usually me. I like to, I read a lot, but not necessarily books, but online stuff, and lots of different things. It's not just data and analytics, it's business stuff, it's I'm interested in how the universe works, so physics and all kinds of whatever happens to catch my attention.
Yeah. Do you have any favorite go-to blogs?
My favorite go-to blog? No, I don't have any, just my own. No, not necessarily blogs, but there's a number of people like on LinkedIn that I follow, and my thinking is very aligned with theirs, like Bill Schmarzo and Malcolm Hawker and Samir Shah. There's a whole bunch. Mark Stauss, who I mentioned before. I think one of the challenges with LinkedIn is that you find your group, and then in some ways it becomes a little echo chamber, right?
Yeah.
Where we're all saying the same things, right? And we're all to each other, and we're all in agreement, right? But then there's this other big world, right, out there that are other things. So I intentionally go look for things that are counter to my views, just so but I don't have data and analytics. I don't have a favorite blog. My favorite podcast is On Being, BEING, with Krista Tippett, but that's got nothing to do with data and analytics. So yeah.
What's the topic of that podcast?
It's more about the human experience, like in a very like she has wonderful poets and philosophers, and so it's more about that. It's not data and analytics. So
yeah.
How about yourself? What are your favorite blogs or podcasts? Or
that's a tough question to ask me as well. I read everything and anything all over the place.
Well, what's of interest for you? What's top of mind for you right now?
Right now, what is top of mind? Halloween was top of mind. Now with it over, I don't know what to do with myself.
Well, aren't you going to just binge on your data candy for the next month? Isn't that until we get to the, Thanksgiving, and then we can start and just roll right into the new year?
This is very true. I saw so many bar charts of candy bars on LinkedIn the other day. It was so hilarious.
That's funny. That's funny. Huh. I wonder what the visualization people would say about that.
Yeah, it was great visualizations. I like anytime you see visualizations or some kind of like normal distributions happening in the real world.
Mm-hmm.
That's always fascinating to me. But that is really great advice of, expanding what you are interested in. And that way that you get different perspectives from all of those experiences.
Yeah, I always say, listen to what other people have to say. That doesn't mean you have to agree with them, right? But I mean,
oh yeah,
that's all I ever want. It's like, okay, can you just listen to what I have to say? Doesn't mean you have to agree with me, but then we can have a conversation about it versus, just like, nope, don't want to hear it, or you're trying to get across your own agenda without really listening.
Yeah.
I think it was Stephen Covey who said, seek first to understand and then be understood.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's one way that people don't think about as a way to learn, is to disagree. Because then you have those conversations and learn even more from all kinds of sides.
Right.
Yeah. That and failure, because you learn from failure as well.
Actually, I think a lot of times you learn better from failure. At least in my experience, right? Like, I'm never gonna forget that.
Yeah. Hopefully, right?
No, don't open your mouth and say what's on your mind in the all hands when the CEO is speaking. No, don't do that.
Oh goodness.
No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah. No, that is a good piece of advice, though. Yeah. So, do you have any other final words of encouragement, recommendations, or advice for the listeners out there?
I think my only advice is be clear about what you want in life, right? Even whether it's professional or personal or whatever, so that you can make choices that are aligned with that. I think a lot of times we go through life and we're just kind of getting batted back and forth because we really don't know what we want, right? And knowing what we don't want is just as important because it helps us narrow down what we do want. We have so much choice now, so much choice in the things that we read and where we work, the type of work that we do. We don't have time to do everything, right? And our most precious resource is time. The older you get, the more you realize that. But, it's true. So what is it that you want to do with the time that you have, right? And that's the best piece of advice I can give anybody.
I love that so much. Thank you so much, Dan.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks for having me. And I hope everybody comes and listens to a Data Parody song. Get them
yes.
So.
And if any of the listeners have questions for you, where can they find it or follow you?
LinkedIn. Yeah.
Okay.
Dan Everett, or search hashtag the Techno Optimist. That's the hashtag I use. So.
Awesome.
All right.
Well, thank you again for coming on the show.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me. Bye-bye.
And as always, folks, happy learning.